My name is Danae Howard. I am a conceptual artist and teacher and programmer. And I work with Culture Push, um, with the fellows and also leading the Black Utopian Fellowship. Um, that's a little bit about me. I live in New York. I'm born and raised from New York City. And my focus right now is like aiding artists in creating their programs in a very hyper community type of way.
Hi,
Pass it to Marley.
thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Moira. I am a disabled and Lenape artist and organizer, um, specifically with disability culture and ecosomatics and the environment. And I'm also a curator, and I do I have a wide range of works that I do. I just grab any kind of medium or method to communicate, making and playing and things like that. I am currently the Access Doula and Disability Cultural Activist at Culture Push. Thanks. And Clarenda.
I am Clarenda Matlow, and I am executive director, which means that I'm kind of like just helping people do what they need to do. I'm an artist and an organizer and an educator, and I am very interested in changing systems and institutions in a variety of ways. So I was also one of the founders of Culture Push, and it's a constantly changing beast. And we'll say more about that in the presentation, which was made by our amazing digital media manager, Surbi Naik, who is not with us here, but might as well mention her. And we'll say a little more about the rest of the staff when I start. Yeah, that's us. Welcome to you both. So first information session for spring 2024. Who is Culture Push? That's us. So from bottom left up over the tree, there's Moira, Surbi, Sur, she goes by Sur, me, Danae, and then Sneha is our new accounts manager. So that's our beautiful tree of life. And so one thing that began us, like the three of us that began Culture Push, which was me and an artist named Arturo Vidic and an artist named Aki Sasamoto, we wanted to know what it meant to be an artist now. So that was 15 years ago, but we still want to know that at Culture Push, understand what does it mean to be an artist now? And what you see here is a collage of images from our last symposium. So all these different activities are part of what fellows and associated artists do and how they share their practice. Our symposium is a symposium of practice where we share, and we'll say more about that later. So we are interested in both social engagement and interdisciplinary creativity, and both of those things have importance. And this is part of our mission statement, thinking about how specialized fields can divide us, but there are so many resources now to call on, and we want to, as artists who began it and artists who still run it, we understand the need to support adventurous ideas that are often scary for other institutions. So that's part of why we created Culture Push, to support these ideas and these practices and to evolve over time and be nimble with what artists need in the moment, and making sure that people who don't have access to resources get the access, because the ideas are often among folks who don't have many resources. You have to be resourceful. So finding and nurturing those ideas is a core part of our mission. So Fellowship for Utopian Practice. This is our open call, spring 2024. And so the Fellowship for Utopian Practice was a placeholder name that we came up with in 2012 when the original 3 founders were burning out, and we're like, wait, what do we really want to do? Because we had done all these different programs and we're running things and trying to be artists. And we slimmed down and realized that we really needed a place for people to test out the very beginnings of an idea. So part of a design process or a scientific methodology almost. So creating this platform where people can test very new ideas and offering some kind of financial support, as well as feedback, mentorship. And one thing that's really important is giving an institutional face to the work so that there is a container that helps make things more legible. So the fellowship, it's a testing ground for new ideas that connect artistic practice, civic engagement, and social justice. And those things mean different things to different people. So obviously that can take quite a range of forms, but it is also, that is a strength of ours, the fact that we have a wide range of people that we want to reach and that reach out to us. And we serve artists by giving creative, analytical and logistical tools. And we say analytical and logistical because if you're working within civic engagement and social justice, all of those tools, it has to be a 3-dimensional approach to the work. And you have to think about analyzing the data that you're gathering in a way. And then you have to think about the logistics of how you're connecting to different kinds of people and different kinds of communities. So in our first 4 years, we supported, again, this wide variety of approaches and people and communities. And then more recently, these are some of the things that have happened more recently in the past couple years. So, whoops, there's one more person. Hello and welcome. We have begun. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're just going through a little presentation about the fellowship and the organization, but welcome. Okay, so this is what's happened in the past year. Whoops, sorry. We've been thinking about waterfronts. People are thinking about food culture. People are thinking about what it means to create a living memorial. And I highly recommend checking out the current and past fellows to get a sense of the kinds of projects that people have worked on. Oops. Okay. So it's a year-long fellowship, and it's open to creative people who want to really think beyond the boundaries of their practice, stretch their understanding of what they do and how they're doing it. And we bring in 3 to 4 fellows for each cycle. So that's 6 to 8 fellows per year. that can end up being up to like 15 artists because there are like, often there are collectives. So when we say fellows, that can contain multitudes, just to let you know. And oops, this is an error. The spring 2024 cycle is dedicated to, one slot is dedicated to a climate justice fellow. So,
Lorinda?
yes.
Oh, you cut out for a moment. So how many fellows at any one moment might there be?
Oh, I mean, there's only 6 to 8 fellows, but a fellow can contain several. So that
Oh,
can be,
yeah.
a collective can be like a fellow. We call
Okay.
that a fellow. So there can be I mean, we've had up to 10 people in a collective be a fellow. Just so I was saying that even though there are 6 to 8 per year, that may end up containing 15 people that we're working with per year. Yes. Thank you, Moira. Any other questions? All right. And maybe I'll hand this over to one of you soon. I'll just do the Climate Justice Fellowship, and then Moira or Danae, maybe you want to take over, and I'll just advance the slides because get tired of my voice. All right, Climate Justice Fellowship. So we set this up in 2020, I believe. Yes. Because it was clear that this is a very urgent issue that people are thinking about and that really needs to be addressed. And we want to encourage that thought within a hyper-local context, the context of New York City, because there's a lot of things happening in New York City around climate that are affected by climate change. And so, and it encompasses, it's a very complex issue that encompasses not just the sense of the climate changing, but also class and race and location, and many, many, many different issues are contained in this idea of climate justice and access to resources. So so for our 5th Climate Justice Fellowship, this is something that was developed by our current Climate Justice Fellow, Nora Almeida. And we're looking for ideas and projects that see human justice and environmental issues as one and the same, and that helps people identify with and be part of a larger so-called more than human ecosystem, meaning that humans are not the only thing in the ecosystem. It's obvious, but sometimes you have to say it. And then thinking about issues of climate justice that face New York City, which is a large coastal metropolis. We are surrounded and engulfed and engaged constantly with water on our shorelines, in our sewers, etc. So the theme is points of contact, conflict, and convergence, and thinking about examining often contradictory, contrasting ideas, not necessarily contradictory, but they sometimes can come into conflict. Ideas of environmental stewardship and resilience, and helping us to understand the complexity of these issues, but also the urgency of addressing them right away. So these are ideas that are expansive and include this understanding, and it can take many forms. So some of the examples are specific land use conflicts. And thinking about, so that can be, that's very like oriented towards how New York City works, for example, and one particular shoreline and the conflicts that may come along that. So, for example, one of our climate justice fellows, and we'll get to more of them later, dealt specifically with, and is still dealing specifically with Flushing Bay and Creek, and the tremendous amount of development around there and environmental issues that are brought up by that development and the ways that that kind of development is allowed and what happens and who benefits and who doesn't. But also we're thinking about other elemental, like physical explorations about where land meets water and the way we engage as bodies, as human bodies, with this land and water. So yes, diverse viewpoints, many different kinds of thinking about it. So nitty-gritty, deadline, March 12th, 2024. And these are, you can find the guidelines here at culturepush.org/guidelines. Okay, who wants to take over?
I can read.
Thank you.
The fellowship program is open to all artists and other professionals working in any discipline who wish to expand the boundaries of their practice. Applicants are encouraged to review our organization's mission as well as the specific nature of this open call before submitting materials. And we will award the Climate Justice Fellowship to one applicant, but the one applicant can be a collective.
Yes.
I'll also read the mission. Our mission is Culture Push is an arts organization that creates programs to nurture artists and other creative people who are approaching common problems through hands-on civic participation and imaginative problem solving. The mission of Culture Push is to create a likely exchange of ideas between many different communities, artists and non-artist professionals, practitioners, and lay people across generations, neighborhoods, and cultures. Culture Push supports the process of creating new modes of thinking and doing and serves a diverse community of creative people. The programs of Culture Push focus on collaboration as group learning through active participatory experiences. Culture Push programs appear in many different locations, taking many different forms, and public presentations are low cost or free to give access to the widest audience.
So in this presentation, Sir has highlighted some phrases that are key to our mission. And we always tell people in our FAQs, in our instructions to the application, look at our mission, look at what's been done before. It's very important because it's not a standard one-size-fits-all kind of fellowship. It's not even technically a fellowship. It's just a form of support. But you have to feel like this is where you need to be. This is the kind of help you need. So that's why we share the mission. And here's a timeline. Our deadline is March 12th. And then we have a selection panel, an independent selection panel that chooses the fellows. And then in April 2024, we tell the fellows, we have the first meeting, probably end of April and maybe early May, depending. And then it's 1 year of support. However, yes, one thing to keep in mind, and I'm sure we'll see this again, but we're saying more than once, we are seeking ideas at the beginning stages of development. So this is very different from a lot of arts applications. There are a few where, you know, you're sending in a new idea, but this is absolutely, it's a little bit on its head rather than something finished and polished. We want to see the seams. We want to know your idea, not necessarily what you've already done on that idea, but where your idea can go. There has to be specificity, but the beginning. And it's really fun for us because then we get all these cool ideas coming in applications. So we do, however, ask that people have at least 3 years of experience in their field, because this is a self-directed and very kind of independent situation where we are there, but we expect the fellow to have their own process. We don't accept undergraduates, students who are currently enrolled. And we do sometimes accept applicants who are in graduate school. I'd say about a year ago, we had one collective that they were in graduate school and it worked out fine. Group collaborative proposals are welcome. Yay, the more the merrier. New socially engaged work that has not received institutional support as of yet. So we're really trying to give resources where there aren't any yet. Before we go on, are there any questions? You can say them, you can put them in the chat. Right. Anybody else want to do the criteria? Yay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Moira. Criteria for proposed projects. To be considered for the fellowship, projects must be interactive and engage the public entirely or in part, in accordance with our mission. Note, our definition of civic engagement includes public talks, live interactive components, skill shares, participatory performances, and similar activities that in some way addresses the public good and have clearly defined goals for serving as a means of generating social change. And another criteria is to test a new and previously unrealized idea that expands the scope of the applicant's current practice.
You want to continue?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to finish, add my exclamation point and send that all to you on the chat. To be criteria for proposed projects continued. To be considered for the fellowship, projects must not be considered as an exhibition or the production of a show, but rather a series of events and/or actions aimed at engaging the public, occur during the fellowship year, take place within the 5 boroughs of New York City. Projects may have components outside of this geographic region, but they will not be supported by Culture Push. If your proposed project is part of a larger piece of series, Culture Push funding may only be applied toward the public engagement component of the project. Clarenda, thank you for changing big.
That's okay. I mean, like, we're all begging all the time, but we do in the beginning.
What we provide. Honoraria for the project is $2,000. Fiscal sponsorship for additional grant-based fundraising and individual contributions, which is really, really, really amazing. Strategic meetings with Culture Push staff, including development and production support, which is also really, really amazing. We've got a lot of great people here. Access to material for the arts, networking meetings with Culture Push Board, Executive Director, staff, advisors, and other fellows. Again, we're amazing. Marketing via the Culture Push Network, email list, and social media contacts for promotional purposes.
And by promotion, that can also be outreach to a community, outreach to people that you want to talk to. So our networks are good for like promoting an event, but also for finding participants or starting a conversation. We don't see like marketing only as a way to push out, but also a way to gather in. Continue.
What we provide continued mentorships with experts in the field, an opportunity to contribute to or edit our online journal, Push-Pull, an opportunity to present your research and project development at the annual Culture Push Symposium, an opportunity to exhibit your work at a public presentation produced by Culture Push alongside past and current fellows. Culture Push does not provide a venue or exhibition space for projects, but we will work with fellows to help secure suitable sites or site.
Yeah, so just to be clear, we do not have a physical space. So this is something that has been true since the beginning. So we were ahead of the curve in being a fully remote organization and office. So, so we don't have like a space that we offer for gatherings, et cetera, but it gives us an opportunity. We see this as an opportunity to form relationships with other organizations that do have physical space. And that has happened, and we've had some really fruitful relationships. So then we overlap with their communities, and that can be really great for many different reasons. All right. Any questions so far? I know I already asked, but I'm going to ask you.
Moira speaking, there are a couple questions.
Yeah, so I can ask that. I can answer. But we will get to that. But as long as the work happens in New York City, you do not have to live in New York City. But the way we are structured, we can only support work that happens in the place where we actually live. We don't have the capacity to kind of reach out across the whole tri-state area or nationally yet. Maybe someday, who knows? Any other questions so far? Yes, Camila.
I had a question. Can we apply with a project that we received a small grant? I'm just like wondering what institutional support means, because I'm thinking of a particular project that is very much in the beginning phase and we received funding for that, but like would love to continue to develop it. And I'm just curious if you could speak to what that previous institutional support means to projects.
That it means that, yeah, I mean, that's happened. People have had like small amounts of money. It's not like it has to be like completely at the beginning without any kind of support, but it's just that really it's at its beginning stages and hasn't been presented, hasn't had a full presentation already, or even like a work in progress. We're hoping that people come to us with things that they haven't been able to get a work in progress started for a variety of reasons. So yes, so having a little money to get you started is not, I don't think that's a barrier.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? Thank you,
I
Camila.
have a question.
Yes.
Could it be like a component of a project that is existing, but that part of it is new? Yes. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's definitely happened before. So for example, one of our previous fellows, I'd say about 2 years ago, she has a very formed performance practice, but she had this other engaged part, like very socially engaged, very participatory, that she wanted to work on, that none of the performance spaces or the performance grants would support. And this often happens within the arts, actually, where there are grants to support a product, but not necessarily process-based work. And this is a process-based fellowship. So the short answer is yes, and that's the long answer. Thank you for asking.
I also have a question,
Right.
Melinda. So one of the slides said something about the goals for serving social change, that the project should have the goal of serving social change. And I'm wondering if a project that you think might have the potential, but it's not, it's a more abstract idea, that the project would be more to be curious about how it connects to ideas of social change. Does that make any sense, my question? Like,
Maybe.
it's not to point to that we have issues with this or that kind of thing, which it seems like a lot of the projects that you have supported in the past, or they are mentioned in the slides, are very concrete kind of connection to an issue. And my idea for what I would propose is something about navigating the world and seeing like what arises from that mode of navigation.
So
Without being concrete about what I'm proposing.
I'm not sure how well that will fly. The one thing we do ask, and that the panel often really pays a lot of attention to, is what are your connection to a specific community? And that can be a community.
Wait. Say this one more time, because you just broke up when the last sentence you just said.
Okay, so I'd say I'm not sure, because often what the panel looks at is the connection to a specific community. And that can be a community of practice, that can be a community of connection through shared identity. It can be a community of people who live in a same neighborhood. So there's a lot of ways, but that is an essential part of the fellowship, is that there is a connection to a clearly defined community, even if you're not already in conversation with that community, and it can be your own community, but that there is a clearly defined kind of community that you want to relate to, and that it is in some way, concretely related to on the ground urgent issues. That's definitely
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think this is why I came to see if it might be the right place for the idea that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and I think that's why I say, look at past fellows and current fellows and just kind of understand where you fall within that.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for asking that. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are wondering the same thing. All right, so these are the questions that are on the application. They're fairly self-explanatory. A couple of things to highlight. So first and last name, email address, pronouns, title, summary. Oh, I'll say something that you'll be privy to, anybody who watches this will be privy to. Be careful with your project summary. Spend some time crafting it, because that's the first thing that all the panelists see. Probably should put that in our FAQs, and we will. So the project narrative. So for the project narrative, we accept both written or spoken or video submissions. And there are specific parameters around that, but this is so that if writing is not your thing and you're really good at talking, great, that's fine. We do ask for a resume or CV to get a sense of what you've done and where you've done it. It isn't necessarily an advantage to have like multiple years of experience, but it's not a disadvantage either. We're really looking at ideas, and that can come from anybody. And so the project narrative, it describes the project, it brings in your goals and your timeline and how it links to the mission. And it's 500 words or less, or 5 minutes of speaking. And just because of what people do in their lives that are busy, we really can't look at more than that, even though there's always more to say. And then work samples. We ask for recent relevant work samples. I'll get into more about this later, but I'll just say, we understand that this idea is at its beginning and you may have no work samples for it, and that's totally fine. Just show us work that is most appropriate to the project that you're proposing. And you can also share sketches of the project you're proposing. Some of the best projects we've had started with a rough sketch, but they also share the work they've done in the world. Woo! Yes. Hold on, let me just make sure I didn't skip something. Yes. And we give parameters for how you should format your work samples, just so we can look at them and they're legible to the people who are looking at it on the panel. So, strongest work samples. So even if something isn't related to the project, you can also include, say, one image or video that feels like this is a really good version of what I do in the world. And that's always going to be helpful. So as I said, we know it's a project you haven't completed and they won't be representative. So the best examples of your work and also the sketch. So we always love to give this example because it's so simple. So for each work sample, so we ask for a PDF that explains and gives context to each work sample, and that context is key because we're not judging by what something looks like. We're judging by, I mean, of course, that's always true. Always judging like something looks like or feels like, but it is not a purely formal judgment. We're looking at how this work sample connects to what you're proposing and what you did during this event. So Simone Johnson was one of our first climate justice fellows, and she sent a very simple photo and a context, and that helped us understand what she was proposing, and it gave us a clear context for an image that doesn't explain itself, because it's documentation of a performance interaction. And here's a little more from Simone, just thinking through things with a sketch. And then another climate justice fellow that same year, Blessing, she sent us a flyer for this event that she'd done and explained it carefully, like why she's sending that flyer, why she's thinking about what she's thinking about. And if
I have a question. There was something about submitting a CV, and there was something about for collective to submit a collaborative CV or a group CV, and I wanted to understand more about what that would look like.
Well, in like a collective CV, it would just share bits of everyone's like personal works or engagements or ways that you have worked together. But yeah. Or I mean, in the past, we've also seen just each person's CV put together into a PDF.
That we also accept proposals with audio or video, if
Mhm.
that's something you'd prefer to do, but also with a PDF.
This was just a few other of the work samples that Climate Justice Fellows have given, and also to give you a little intro to some of the Climate Justice Fellows. So Nora sent us some photos of her engagement with Coney Island Creek. Cody Herman, I mentioned, was working with Flushing Bay and Creek and working with canoeing, getting people out into the water in this very polluted waterway, but finding ways to engage with it and see it as a natural, a site of nature and a site of engaging fully with the water and the shoreline. So bringing people out in what she called brownfield boating, meaning boating in this water, but boating nonetheless. And there are several people that do that in that body of water. So it's a known space for that. And then Alicia Morales worked with a series of characters and augmented reality that she created along the shoreline of the Gowanus Canal. So more application questions. We asked for a reference because we want to get to know you a little better and understand who you know and how they know you, and helps us know who we're talking to and who we're talking about. Also, we have an associated artist program. So sometimes there are people that aren't quite right for the fellowship, but we feel like, oh, we can offer each other something, Culture Push and this person. And so this is a smaller stipend and a little less hands-on, but a lot of the same advantages accrue to the associated artist. So an associated artist may be someone who's a little farther along, but could really still use institutional support. And then we kind of figure that out through the application process. And then there are a few different questions, sources of funding, support and accessibility needs. And then we also recently started asking this time around demographic information. So we get a sense of who is applying and where they come from. And for the Climate Justice Fellowship, does somebody want to read these?
Moira speaking. What is, for the climate justice, the questions are, what is your intended focus for the Climate Justice Fellowship? How does it relate to the stated theme? So we want a written narrative of 300 words, entered in the text box, or a spoken narrative, 3 minutes. You can enter a link in the text box. The Climate Justice Fellowship may include connections and consultations with arts organizations such as the Collective Works on Water. Do these connections interest you? If so, what organizations interest you, and how would this be helpful for you? And then that's 100 words. And then the next question is, if you are selected for the Climate Justice Fellowship, would you like to be considered for the Fellowship for Utopian Practice?
Great. So, to the frequently asked questions, also known as FAQs.
Do you want me to read these?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do I have to complete the project within the fellowship year? No, your project does not need to conclude within the fellowship year in order to be successful. We only require that you develop your project during the year and have at least one public presentation of your work. The fellowship is a process-based program. We are more interested in supporting artists as they develop sustainable working strategies to pursue unusual lines of inquiry than in seeing a finished project. Many fellowships projects become long-term commitments that only begin with the fellowship. Do I have to live in New York to apply? Technically, you do not have to currently reside in New York City to be eligible for the fellowship. However, the fellowship is designed to support artists engaging directly with people, places, and institutions in New York City. If you do not currently live in New York and would like to apply, we would expect you to relocate here for at least the duration of the fellowship in order to develop your project and attend regular meetings. Outside of the $1,500 stipend, we cannot yeah, it's 2,000, right?
Yes.
Outside of the $2,000 stipend, we cannot currently provide funds to assist with travel or living expenses.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Apologies for that mishap in the middle. I'm glad we didn't get kicked out of our room. And we look forward to hearing from you, and tell all your friends.